So today we're having a short press conference with a number of community organizations. The Canadian Arab Federation is present with Mr. Ali Mala. Independent Jewish Voices is going to speak as well. Toronto Centre for Palestine, Scarborough Southwest for Palestine, and World Beyond War are going to say a few words. And then we're going to wrap up and join the demonstration that's taking place across the street. Okay? So, without belaboring the point, I'll move to our first speaker, Mr. Ali Mala from the Canadian Arab Federation.
That's when the interference begins. Okay. Sure, everything is perfect.
Thank you, Stephen, from Legal Center for Palestine. I think he didn't mention that. Thank you so much. And for the center itself, for all the service you're providing. And on behalf of Canadian Arab Federation, I thank all of you. And I thank the people of Toronto who gather week after week to speak up for Palestine. We at the Canadian Arab Federation have been embarking in a consultation process, and we will be talking to so many groups across the country because we need to send a message to the politician from City Hall to Ottawa. In 2008, Professor Shireen Razak wrote a book called Casting Out, the eviction of Muslims from Canadian law and politics. But what we've seen today is the eviction of pro-Palestinians from all walks of life and from all faith, the eviction of pro-Palestinians from Canadian life and politics.
Shame.
But we are united, not only here, but the people of Palestine and the people of Lebanon are united by martyrdom, by the blood, and by the determination to resist the occupation. So I know it's a brief press conference, and just to mention that the obstacles we are dealing with, a notice was sent out to mainstream medias, and none of them, to their shame, have bothered and to show up. We as a Canadian Arab Federation communicating with Olivia Chow a couple times to have a meeting face to face, and they keep canceling it. And the same happened with the so-called chief of the police. I say the so-called because he is the chief of a police services. Their job is to protect and serve, but lately, in the last several months, their job become how to oppress and suppress pro-Palestinians. And we will not take it anymore. We are not a second and the class citizen of this country. We have equal rights like everybody else, and we are willing to take the campaign for Palestine everywhere we go, from City Hall to Queen's Park and to Ottawa. And together we can do it. And I thank you as a community organization from various parts of the city for being here and lending your voice and your support for Palestine and Lebanon. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Ali, for that strong message. Our next speaker today is going to be Art Young from Independent Jewish Voices. Art?
Thanks, Steve. Thanks very, very much. As Steve mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of Independent Jewish Voices, and it really is an honor and a privilege to share the platform with this range of speakers. I want to give a particular shout out to my old and still young comrade, Ali Mala.
Thank you.
Ali and I go back decades in this struggle, and we're still together, still fighting on the thing. It's such a pleasure to connect again on this circumstance. I do want to say a couple things to add the IJV perspective on this. We stand with everyone who is exercising their right to dissent and to protest, and we will continue supporting all those whose rights are being limited or who are being repressed for speaking out against some of the greatest crimes being committed in this century. Bravo to them, and let us all unite in their support. In terms of the situation in Palestine, I want to share with you the fact that about 10 days ago, we in IJV received an urgent appeal from Palestine, from the comrades that we work with in the Palestine National BDS Committee, highlighting the extreme form that the genocide is now taking in Gaza in particular. A sort of, in my terms, a genocide within the genocide. And they asked us, it's a public appeal, it's online, to do everything we could to extend and strengthen the movement. A peaceful, nonviolent movement of protest against our government's policy and those of the great Satan, as some would have it. We are following that advice to the best of our ability, but it's something we need to unite around and turn our movement of the thousands, the many thousands, into a movement of millions in Canada. It can be done, and it is our responsibility to do it. I want to move on quickly. We refuse to treat the videos that we see daily as normal, as something we should get used to. That Palestinian life, in contrast to other life, is cheap and deserves to be destroyed at the whim of a greater force. That is not a world we accept. That is a world that we are going to fight against to our last breath. And there is a sea change in the Jewish community that is very significant. Ellie and I were just talking about that before we got started. A division between the generations. And there is a deep rejection by young Jews on the campuses and in their homes to accept that this is how you fight anti-Semitism. On the contrary, it is a form of embracing racism, which always rebounds against the Jews. But above all, it is anti-human and antithetical to any concept of the world that we want to live in. So, in short, we are in this. It has been a long struggle. What we have done so far has not been enough to force the great powers, Israel and the United States, to reverse course. We are not giving up. We are looking for ways to broaden and strengthen the movement and to unite all of us here today and beyond, and to build something that is qualitatively more powerful and can make a real contribution to ending this genocide. we'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art. We want to thank Art for those words. Independent Jewish Voices have been incredible leaders in this battle over the years, and we're very happy to have IJV as part of this press conference today. We're going to have someone from Scarborough Southwest for Palestine. Pooja, want to say a few words?
Thank you. My name is Pooja Malhotra. I'm representing Scarborough Southwest with our MP, Bill Blair, who's managed to ignore us at every point. And I'm looking around myself right now on either side. We're being barricaded in by the police force that are enacting the policies that he had started as the police chief. And it's like all we're asking for is a stop to the genocide that's happening in Palestine. And yet we've seen a year in the constant repression, oppression, and brutalizing of just common people at every single level, be it municipal, provincial, or federal. Contrary to popular belief and the lie that's being spread, all the riding groups, all the people who show up day in, day out, we're not funded by anyone. I wish we were, but we're not. We're just regular people who come in, have regular day jobs, families, problems. But we understand that if we don't speak up, this is not going to stop because our governments are completely incapable, one, of listening to what their people are saying. The masters, the ruling governments, they think that they can just get away with anything. They don't understand that we are the ones who put them there and we can take them away. The recent labeling of Samidon as a terrorist organization sets a very dangerous precedent where any arbitrary rule can be applied to just about any organization to clamp down dissent. And the dangerous Israeli lobby that we've seen constantly in the ears of our governments, our representatives, walking towards clamping down on just any pro-Palestinian voice, that's unacceptable. Our governments, if they're completely incapable of actually doing their job, should just tell us that they can't do it, step away so we can do their jobs for them. And the best time to move away from the US policy was last year. The next best time is right now. We are turning into US light, where we don't have any stance for our own selves. Canada doesn't speak for itself. It only follows what its US master says, which we can see right now by protecting a building for a third country. And the people we elected to represent and serve us are basically clamping down on us at every point so that they can, work for the interests of a foreign government in a third country in the Middle East. And that's completely unacceptable. So we will continue to show up every single day until this stops. And we will still continue to show up because we want to continue advocating for ourselves and our rights and work against the people who do not see us as just human beings. Thank you.
I just want to mention some of the content that we're talking about is the overcharging and the arresting of Palestine solidarity activists. We see this happening where school boards are refusing to provide anti-Palestinian racism training, refusing to even acknowledge the existence of anti-Palestinian racism, which goes hand in hand with the genocide that's taken place in Gaza. As well, the outrageous designation of Samidun as a terrorist organization. We want to speak out against that. It is absolutely ludicrous. It is ludicrous that our government wouldn't say a word about what's unfolding in Gaza, what's unfolding in Lebanon, but will point a finger at Palestinian solidarity activists and declare them to be terrorists. And it's an absolute disgrace. So our next speaker from Toronto Centre for Palestine is Faisal Ibrahim. He's going to say a few words, and then after that we'll hear from World Beyond War. Faisal.
So my name is Faisal. I'm with Toronto Centre for Palestine. So over the last year, I've watched day after day, week after week, the Zionist entity of Israel continuing its barbaric campaign of genocide against the Palestinians. This is after the Zionist leadership expressed in no uncertain terms its intention to do so. What adds to this horror is that our own politicians gaslight us and callously provide political cover for this genocide, where they label any and all Palestinian resistance groups as terrorists. And while they repeatedly declare their unconditional friendship to the entity committing this genocide, they're now trying to do this domestically too, by labeling groups like Samidun a terrorist organization, despite presenting no evidence of any wrongdoing on their part. Samidun has declared itself it is a prisoner solidarity network that advocates for the over 10,000 Palestinian prisoners in so-called Israel. Prisoners who are held under dubious charges, and over 3,000 of whom are kidnapped people held under arbitrary detention indefinitely and with no charge. Furthermore, we've witnessed a secretive committee be formed under the title of Project Resolute, whereby Palestine organizers and activists are targeted and criminalized in a concerted effort. Again, let me emphasize this. The activists protesting against the genocide of their families and their friends, they are the ones being criminalized. Our politicians who are violating the Geneva Conventions by not only failing to prevent genocide, but who are actively funding and whitewashing it, they are not criminalized. To add insult to injury, here in Toronto, the police unit that has been designated to investigate anything to do with our protests has been cynically called the Hate Crimes Unit, regardless of the fact that our movement has nothing to do with hate, except maybe that we hate genocide.
Yeah.
Keep in mind that any title could have been given to this unit. However, when people from the Palestine Solidarity Movement are unjustifiably arrested for protesting against the genocide and the entities supplying and enabling it, TPS is very quick to make sure you know that they are being investigated by the Hate Crimes Unit. Our mainstream media is also culpable. They failed to show up here despite the seriousness of genocide. And they uncritically parrot TPS press releases in a stenographic fashion. On the other hand, when our charges are eventually dropped because they were bogus in the first place, you hear nothing about this in the mainstream media. This is to say nothing about mainstream media's complicity in manufacturing consent for this genocide in the first place, as they consistently dehumanize the Palestinian victims of this genocide and make excuses for the destruction of their life-supporting infrastructure, their hospitals, their schools, and while they make excuses for the genocide entity that is carrying out these war crimes. Shame. So back to the behavior of the police who enable the genocide by trying to sabotage and suppress our movement and who propagandize against it. I've also witnessed another strategy that TPS employs: violence. I personally have been pepper sprayed and punched and tackled by police officers while having committed no criminal offense, nor having broken any laws, and I've seen others be treated similarly. The police think that they can scare us. Nothing is scarier to us than the genocide of our friends and our families. And they are working so hard to enable this genocide through their attacks on our movement. As the indigenous folk of Turtle Island have been repeatedly telling us, and as members of the police abolitionist movement have also been telling us, the police do not keep us safe. We keep us safe. The police protect those that enable genocide, and they protect their property and their investments in genocide. In 2001, the Canadian government wisely decided not to participate in the war on Iraq and not to follow the United States in an illegal war that we know was launched on false evidence and lies, and which resulted in the murder of over 1 million Iraqis. So far, so-called Canada has spent over a year not only laundering the lies of the Zionist entity, but also engaging in weapons trade with it as it continues its genocidal ethnic cleansing campaign. We call on the Canadian government, media, and civil establishments: stand against U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East and end your complicity in genocide. Impose a two-way arms embargo on so-called Israel. And stop criminalizing the people who are opposing genocide and war crimes. And stop smearing them with your idiotic hate crimes unit. Finally, to my Palestinian friends, allies, and the world. I'd like to say, from the river to the sea, Palestine will soon be free. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Marlene Weber from World Beyond War. She's going to say a few words, and then we'll have a surprise speaker at the end. Thank you.
Hi, as Stephen said, I'm Marlene Weber from World Beyond War. And the world as we see it is upside down. As Gabor Mate said earlier this week, as we watched a young man hooked up to his IV be burned alive by the U.S.-Israel genocide. In northern Gaza, in the genocide, as someone mentioned earlier, within a genocide, he said that we are watching the Holocaust, a Holocaust on TikTok. And that is the truth. And those of us around the world who are opposing the mass murder and depraved, unimaginable atrocities sponsored by the criminal U.S. and its shameful Western allies, including our own shameful government, we, the people who are opposing all this, we are being criminalized, arrested, and vilified by the state. Hence, the designation of Samidun as a terrorist organization, which is again upside down. It's the criminals making these decisions. At the same time, the mainstream media, the so-called free press, what a joke, promotes the official line. Meanwhile, the mass murderers are valorized. We, the people, must force our unrepresentative governments to enact a two-way arms embargo, and we must force the media to stop lying. And just on a last note about the media, recently there was a vigil for the 178 to date. There may be more now, but that was a couple of weeks ago. There was a vigil right next to the CBC for the 178 journalists and media workers in Palestine and Lebanon who've been murdered. It's unimaginable. Do you think there was a single CBC journalist there, or a journalist from any of the other so-called free press? Shame. I guess, shame. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
Thank you. We're going to have a few words from what I understand to be fifth generation Palestinians, and Jamal is going to say a few words as well. So come on over here.
They are the fifth generation of Palestinians. They won't forget. They won't forgive. We will be back to Palestine. Whatever the case is, we won't forgive. We won't forget Palestine. I'm from Jerusalem. They are the fifth generation. We are going back.
Yes.
Okay. I want to thank everyone for showing up and for your words. This press conference was the product of collaboration of a number of community organizations that are getting together and forcing the issue and hitting the streets. And as you can hear from the horns from the cars, the majority of people in this country are against war. They're against genocide, right? And they're against this complicit government, right? So we're the majority. Even though the mainstream media doesn't represent what we, our values of solidarity and equality, right? For all peoples, right? We will push our governments to represent us, right? We will fight for a ceasefire. We will make it happen, okay? And so today, thanks for coming out. Thanks to World Beyond War, Scarborough Southwest, and Toronto Centre for Palestine, Independent Jewish Voices, and the Canadian Arab Federation for showing up today. We're going to stop now, and we're going to join the majority of Canadians across the street who oppose war and genocide. And we're going to be speaking with one voice this afternoon. Thank you.